Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Miles, I use they them pronouns, and here I'd like to talk about books. I mostly read horror, but these days I've been branching out a little, checking out some other things. I'm an English student, and I fucking love to read, and that's why I'm here. Anyways, if you're new here, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you like what you see. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate having you here. And to everybody, I hope that your new year is going great so far. Mine's been okay. I had this video filmed already and then the video corrupted. So here I am, second time's the charm, let's film it again. And today I'm going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2021. And I read quite a few books in 2021. I read 123. I really wanted to get to 125, but we didn't get there, and that's okay. I have quite a few favorites, as you can imagine, since I read so many, so I think in this list is like 15 books or something like that. For the first 5, I have already talked about these books to death on my channel. I've talked about these books so much, and I honestly don't see the point in going into them that further, because I have just talked about them so many times. So for these first 5 books, if you want to know more about them, if you're new to my channel, feel free to go to my, feel free to go to my fall and Halloween recommendations video and my top 10 books of all time video. So I would like to talk about first Coyote Songs by Gabino Iglesias. Duh, of course. I love this book so much. I talk about it all the time. Read this book. If you're a horror fan, read this fucking book. That's all I gotta say. And of course, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. As for the first 5 books on this list, I can't believe that I read all of these this year. Like, they have become such a part of like my taste and my personality, especially like on this channel. Like, I talk about this book all the time. It's my entire fucking personality. And I love Stephen Graham Jones, and everyone knows I love Stephen Graham Jones. And it's just like, it's weird that the first time I read his work was this year. So anyways, Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Amazing book, we all know that. Also, My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix was another favorite that I've talked about so many times, as well as The Library Book by Susan Orlean, one of the books that got me back into nonfiction. I can't stop reading nonfiction now, and Susan Orlean really did that. That book was amazing. And then also, Hex by Thomas Oldhoyvelt is also in this top 5 of books that I've already talked about so many times. So those are those books. Obviously, I loved them so much, but I just did not see the need to talk about them extensively again today. So now that we've gotten past those, let's get into the books that we haven't talked about yet. Okay, so in this next category, which is just books that I haven't talked about as much, I would like to start with True Crime by Samantha Kolesnik. I have talked about this book a decent amount, but it's been a while, so I just wanted to talk about it today. One of my favorite books of the year. It is about a girl named Susie that has been abused her entire life, and one day she finally just fucking snaps and kills her abuser. And this leads to a situation where her and her brother have to flee town, and basically they end up going on a cross-country murder spree. And this is a novella. There's not really many spoilers here. It says that on the back. But I just loved this book. It was really the first indie, like, small press horror novel I've read, like, almost ever, and I had kind of been against them, not because I wasn't interested or I didn't like the content or anything, but because I'm poor, and so I never put the money into buying new books usually, so I was just like, I don't need these, like, fuck small press horror, I don't care, like, I have other things to read, I can't borrow them from the library, so who cares? This really changed my mind. I loved this book. It had a lot to say about like cycles of abuse, and I don't know, the use of violence is really heavy in here, but none of it felt misplaced or heavy-handed. It all was important to the character development and important to the plot, specifically important to Susie's character. This book is so disturbing. It has a lot of really graphic, intense imagery, and it was really great to read though. I finished it in like a day. I blew through it super fast. This is actually a signed copy. that I got. You can't really see it, but oh my god. I don't really own any signed copies, so this was really exciting for me. Thank you, Samantha Kolesnik, for signing this. Anyways, great book, very disturbing. If you're a horror fan and you like really intense, graphic, violent horror, check this out. I would also recommend this for fans of The Devil All the Time. I've not read the book yet, but I did watch the movie the other day and it gave me similar vibes. This book is totally different from what I just talked about, but I also really loved Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid this year. I honestly haven't thought about this book in a while, but when I first read it, I fucking loved it. 5-star, said it was my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I do kind of stand by that. But upon like reviewing my list of favorites this year, I remembered this one. I was like, oh my god, wait, this book was amazing. So, if you have never heard of this, it is a historical fiction set in 60s through 80s California, following the infamous Riva family. The main character is Nina Riva, who is a supermodel and a surfer, and she is the oldest sister of the family. Taylor Jenkins Reid crafts this really fleshed out, thoughtful family drama. It starts when Nina's parents meet back in the 60s, and it follows their entire like courtship and them falling in love. And then we get the kids and we just get their entire family history. So it really, when we come back to present day in the 80s, it really informs every single character's decisions, and we know like everything about them. We know what makes them tick. And so I really like that. I really like how Taylor Jenkins Reid always seems to just flesh out her characters so well. And this family has so many secrets. And so the bulk of the book happens in the 80s at this end of summer party that Nina hosts every year. They're like infamous around that area. And a shitload of famous people attend and all of that. And of course the whole family is there. And as the night goes on, more and more secrets start to come out, things start to get more intense, lots of family drama. And we know from the very beginning that the night ends in the entire mansion catching on fire and burning down. So there's also that kind of aspect running throughout the book where it's like, who's gonna do it? Like, was it an accident? Did someone burn the house down on purpose? Like, blah, 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 blah. So that really keeps the book moving as well. And I love drama. I love family drama. So this was a really good book. It was also the perfect beach read when I was living in Florida this summer in my hometown. So good. I read this whole book on the beach, and that is exactly how it was meant to be consumed. Next up is Jane, a Murder by Maggie Nelson. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. It was assigned for a true crime class that I was in, and I read it in like 2 hours and just absolutely fucking loved it. It follows the author, Maggie Nelson, uncovering the story of the murder of her Aunt Jane in 1960 and the effect that it had on her and her family. This is a multimedia novel done through poetry, prose, newspaper articles, and even fragments from Jane's own diaries, which is just, it's heartbreaking. It is so well done, and it truly feels like, yeah, as we're following the author, we're also slowly getting to know Jane and who she was, and just feel the weight upon her family and just the fucking greater world for losing this person. And it seems that, in my opinion, as someone who used to really enjoy true crime and really heavily participate in the genre and the community, I think true crime has never really been a genre with empathy for the victims. It never really fleshes out the victims in the way that I think it should. But this book definitely did. And it's not true crime, but it's about a crime. And if you are a true crime fan, I would definitely recommend reading this because it kind of will restore that sense of reality upon all of the true crime content that you consume. I think it's very easy to get wrapped up in true crime as a genre and see it as something fun because that's the way it's marketed. And we talked a lot about that in the entire class and just like, should we even be marketing true crime? Like, what are the ethics of this? Why is it okay that true crime is just fun and funny now? Anyways, long explanation just to say this book was extremely powerful. It was disturbing, it was heartbreaking, but it was beautifully written, and one of the first poetry works that I've really connected with. It's not fully poetry, but there is some in there, and I really enjoyed it. So if you have not read this and you are a true crime fan, check it out. Next up is Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. This is the only graphic novel on this list, and I don't really read that many graphic novels, but when I was at the bookstore, I saw that the witch on the front cover had hearing aids, and so I had to pick it up. I'm hard of hearing, I wear hearing aids, and I've kind of been searching for that representation my whole life. And so it was really cool to see that in just this sweet, like, little middle grade graphic novel. It's my favorite graphic novel I've read in a long time. I used to really be into the genre, but I've just kind of fallen out of it lately. But Mooncakes follows a Chinese-American teenage witch who is hard of hearing, and her childhood crush, who also happens to be a non-binary werewolf. The representation in here is so fantastic. There is hard of hearing, queer, fucking non-binary representation, and I'm all of those things. So this book really stuck with me. I also, like, I wish this book was around for me when I was younger. When I was in, like, 4th grade, I was fucking obsessed with witches and vampires and werewolves, and I would have given anything for a story like this with so much positive representation. So it makes me really happy that hopefully kids today will read books like these and feel seen and not feel so alone. That's a little deep, but representation is so important, and this is one of the first places that I've seen hard of hearing representation that made me feel seen and made me feel really happy. Like, there were little experiences in here, just like taking out your hearing aids to pick up the phone and stuff like that, that I didn't think anyone else did. So that was cool. So these final books are from the latter few months of the year, and I didn't get to make any wrap-ups for those parts of the year. So this is going to be the first time that I've talked about all of these books that I loved so much. So I'm really excited to talk about these. And we're going to start with one of my most anticipated books of the year. I just hit myself in the face. My Heart is a Chainsaw. You can't see it because it's too bright. My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Fuck, this book was so good. I read it for my horror class. I waited for a long time to read it because I wanted to read it close to the assignment date because, of course, I wanted to be on top of things. It was so fucking good. It follows Jade, a teenage girl who is obsessed with slasher films. Her hometown of Proof Rock is very quickly being gentrified, and a bunch of new people are moving into the town to live in, like, this elite, rich new neighborhood among all of the poverty that a lot of other people in the town experience. And when this happens, people start dropping around the area. And since Jade is so fucking obsessed with slasher films, she's really the only one that's picking up on it, and the only one that can really do anything about it. And then when shit hits the fan, we are following her as she tries to figure out who or what is causing all of this horror. It is so good. I loved this book. A lot of complaints I've seen about it is that it's too slow or that it lags in the middle. And I think that is fair. It definitely starts off slow, but the fucking, like, last quarter of this book, specifically, like, the last 100 pages, was fucking crazy. Like, well worth the entire read. If you were bored for any of this book, the last 100 pages should have made it up to you because they were so good. Just such a wild ride. Like, so many twists and turns. It was so, so good. Stephen Graham Jones is one of my favorite authors. He's truly done it again with this book. You can tell how well researched it is too. Like, Jade talks about slasher films a lot and quotes them a lot and drops names a lot. And it was really fun as someone who also really loves slashers to notice your favorite movies mentioned in here, but then also there's so many, like, niche ones in here that it gives you a watch list as well. So that was really fun. You can tell Stephen Graham Jones cares so much about the genre and worked really hard on, I don't know, just putting a lot in here for horror fans. I think this might be my new favorite Stephen Graham Jones book. I mean, obviously, like, it's really hard for me to decide because I love both of these books so much, but like, I don't know, My Heart is a Chainsaw. I think I liked that it was longer. I liked that there was more character development, and oh my god, the end, definitely like the end better than this one. But they're both 5-star books and I love them very much, so it's kind of unfair to compare them. But like, My Heart is a Chainsaw was a perfect book for me, full of so many twists and turns, and it actually ended in a way that I did not fucking expect at all. And there's a sequel coming out this year. I'm so excited. So I am gonna group these two books together because they are both part of the Wayward Children series, which I binge read. I think I read 6 of them within a week. I haven't read a series like that since I was a kid, like just all at once, and it was really fun. This series really captivated me. So the series in whole, I would just put on my favorites of the year as well. None of them got past a 4-star for me, but I just enjoyed it so much that it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't have to be the best books that I read this year, it's my favorite. And out of the series, my 2 favorites were Down Among the Sticks and Bones and In an Absent Dream. The series follows Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, which is a place for people to go that found an alternate reality. They found a door and then stayed there for however long, and then were unfortunately thrust back into the original reality, or the one that we live in today. And Eleanor West created this space for people that have experienced that, wayward children, to come to and stay and be among like-minded people and all of that. So the series follows one person per book, and it follows the reality on the other side of the door that they went through. So Down Among the Sticks and Bones followed a pair of twins, Jack and Jill, that are transported into this world called the Moors. And okay, I fucking love a Moors setting. First of all, they're just so like gothic and spooky and dark. I really like that. But anyways, this world also has vampires, werewolves, mad scientists. Are you kidding? Like, I love that. I love that so much. It follows the choices that each twin makes and how they lead them apart and how they end up living completely different lives in the Moors. They're basically like enemies after a while. The spooky setting was perfect. I loved the queer representation. And of course, I love some vampires, werewolves, and mad scientists, and some Moors. Literally, like, what more could you want? And I, 13-year-old Miles would have lost their shit over this book. Once again, wish I was there for it at that time, but that's okay. Next is In an Absent Dream, which I think is book 5. I think Down Among the Sticks and Bones was book 2. Book 5 is like a little prequel. It follows Lundy, who is like the school therapist in the first book, but it follows her as a child, and she opens a door into a world called the Goblin Market, which is also, that title is a poem by Christina Rossetti. I think that's how you pronounce it. I read that poem for my Victorian era class last year and I loved it. But anyways, the story is obviously heavily inspired by that. The setting is exactly what it sounds like, a goblin market. It has very like Labyrinth vibes and very like Dark Crystal vibes, and like also Stardust by Neil Gaiman, very similar. All of that, all of those vibes. Loved it. Wish I lived in the fucking Goblin Market. The setting was so good, and it was just such a good magical read, and I really enjoyed it. Next up is Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This book was so good. I honestly don't have too much to say about it because it's relatively short and I don't really want to give that much away, but it is a queer polyamorous retelling of Dracula's Brides, and it follows Constanta, who is his first bride, through hundreds or maybe even thousands of years, documenting their relationship. she kind of starts to realize throughout the book that things aren't as great as she thought they were, and that maybe her husband is keeping some secrets from her, and that maybe their relationship isn't very healthy. Ultimately, it is a story about overcoming your abuser and taking back your own power, and it was so well done, so beautifully written, very gothic, very sexy. Good book. Love some vampires once again. Next up is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter, an absolutely beautiful edition. I don't know if you can really see, the lighting isn't very good, but this is the 75th anniversary edition, and it is just stunning. It has the, I think it's called beveled edges, maybe I'm wrong, but when they're uneven. Anyways, I read this as a preparation for my independent study about witches in fairy and folk tales, and this doesn't have any witches in it, unfortunately. But it is still a masterclass in rewriting fairy tales. Angela Carter is an amazing writer. I can't wait to read more of her stuff. She really is the first person, I think this came out in '79, is the first person that rewrote fairy tales to fit a more feminist lens. And that's something that's extremely popular these days, and honestly, in my opinion, a little overdone at this point. Not even that fairy tales shouldn't have feminist lenses baked into them all the time, but I don't know, I feel like I've heard too many bad feminist retellings of fairy tales at this point to where I'm kind of tired of it. But Angela Carter, she started it. She created all of the tropes that are so commonplace now. And her writing is just beautiful. It is just like steeped in this appreciation for nature and just, I don't know, the way it's very, she describes everything really heavily, but in this beautiful, like, flowery way. Like, I don't know, her writing was so beautiful. I can't wait to read more from her. But anyways, these gothic, sensual retellings of fairy tales, you have to check them out. My favorites were The Bloody Chamber, which is a retelling of Bluebeard, and The Lady of the House of Love, which is an amazing, like, sad vampire story featuring a lot of inclusion of, like, tarot imagery, which I really loved. That was amazing. I read this during a snowy day in Wisconsin where I was during Christmas, and that was just the perfect setting to read this in. If you enjoy fairy tales or fairy tale retellings, give Angela Carter a try because she literally started it. Like, these are so good. Anyways, loved it. Next, I want to talk about Slewfoot by Brom. Literally the best witch story I've ever read, the best cover that I've seen this year, like, or maybe in my entire life. Beautiful illustrations. Anyways, the story takes place in 1666, and it follows Abatha, an English woman who is traveling to a Puritan colony because she's been married off to a man there. And they live in a cute little cottage in the woods. They have a little farm. They live all the way out from the colony. But there are spirits in the woods, and there's a specific spirit that has just been awoken, and his name is Samson. And he doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't remember his purpose, but all he remembers from his past life is that he had an extreme amount of power, and an extreme amount of power over all the other spirits in this forest. But he doesn't know if he's good or bad, really, and throughout the entire book, he's constantly being torn in between becoming this, like, benevolent forest god or literally the devil, because from society's perception, that's what he is. Anyways, Abatha's husband mysteriously dies, and after that, she develops a relationship with Samson and a relationship with the spirits in the forest. And the story just goes from there. It is amazing. Seriously, the best story about witchcraft that I have ever read. The way that magic and witchcraft and paganism is written in this book is beautiful. It is a story of self-discovery, survival, and witchcraft, of course. It reads like a dark fairy tale. It is just so beautiful. It's steeped in folklore and nature, and it's just such an enchanting book. I'm going to reread this book really soon. Like, once I got into it, I could just not put it down. It was stunning. I actually, as I was recording this video, I have a Libby hold for the audiobook, and it just got ready. So I'm probably gonna reread it like after this video. If you like witches, folk horror, and dark fairy tales, you have to read this book. If you like the movie The Witch, the A24 movie, you have to read this. It's very similar, but a lot more like character development and stuff. And also, thank you to my lovely friend Grace for gifting me this. I would not have read it if she hadn't gotten it for me. So, thank you, Grace. Alright, so the last book I want to talk about today is Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner. I love this book so much. I've really been liking memoirs more lately, and this is one of my favorite memoirs. This is my favorite memoir that I've ever read. It is kind of hard for me to put together my thoughts on this just because I have so many, and at this point I have such a strong emotional attachment to this book, even though I only read it like a month and a half ago. It follows the author Michelle Zauner through the process of losing her mother to cancer, and then the grief that comes after that. Her mom was Korean, and she kind of finds a lot of healing after the loss of rediscovering the culture that she used to kind of take for granted. And it mostly focuses on how Michelle starts cooking Korean food and starts cooking her mother's recipes and really connecting with her posthumously through that. And it is just so beautiful. I definitely have a really strong emotional connection to cooking, and it's always been something that has helped me mentally. So I really related to that aspect of the book. And lately too, I've shied away from sad books for most of my life, but I was really drawn to this one, and I'm so glad I checked it out, because since then too, I have been gravitating towards more sad books and books about grief. I've gone through a few of my own losses this year as well, and this book has really helped me through that, honestly. It has probably impacted me the most out of any book that I've read this year. I cried so many times while reading this, but in the best way possible. It inspired me to start cooking more. I don't know, it's just such a beautiful book. I loved it so much. It is one of my favorite books ever now. So, we're at the end. Those are all of my favorite books of the year. I do want to give you a quick little ranking though, just so you know my top 5, the ultimate favorites, the best of the best. Number 5 is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. Number 4 is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Number 3 is Coyote Songs by Gabino Iglesias. Number 2 is Slewfoot, and number 1 is Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner. I do have a copy of that on the way to me right now that is signed and personalized, so I'm really excited about that. I already ordered a copy, and then someone stole it in the mail, and now the store is sending another one to me, so that's cool. Anyways, those are my top 5 books of the year. Damn, this was a really good reading year. I have gained so many new all-time favorites, and I'm so grateful. I read 123 books this year, which is fucking insane. I never thought I would do that. In the beginning of the year, I set my goal to 60, and then I hit 60, and I was like, well, I guess I'll set it to 100, but I probably won't get it. And then I did, and then I doubled my original goal, which is just crazy. It was a really good year. A lot happened. I started my YouTube channel. Best and worst books of 2020 was my first video, and this feels like a little bit of a full circle moment. So as silly as that is, I'm very grateful for this year. It's been a lot, obviously, but I have really grown my love of literature over this time, and it's been a really special year, and I'm so grateful for all of you for sticking with me throughout this year. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your year is starting off great. And for the question in the comments, I do want to know, what's your reading goal for 2022? I set my goal at 100 books. I would love to hit 150, but let's start at 100 and see how it goes. So comment down below and let me know. If you liked this video, like and subscribe if you want to. I would love to see you back here again. If you are interested, my social media, my Goodreads, and my Instagram are in the description. I would love to see you on there too. But anyways, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day,